I'm Scott Sands. You can find me on X at Scott Sands Media. Thanks for letting me sit in. Last time we talked to our next guest, Brad Meltzer, it was about his book, Make Magic, and it is graduation time for so many schools, and his amazing commencement address at Michigan, which we'll get to in a minute, but he's joining us now to talk about a new book as part of the Ordinary People Change the World series, We Are The Beatles. Brad, it's great to have you back on. Always good to talk with you. Sorry the video link isn't working. I miss seeing your big, beautiful head.
You know, I tried, but it said, this is a virus, you're going to get slaughtered. And so, you know, I can't fall for such tricks.
No, we don't let some radio DJs trick you into downloading a virus.
I know. I was ready for it. I was looking forward to seeing you, and they said, no, I should just do audio. I said, whatever you say. They said they had problems with the link, so here I am.
All right, so Ordinary People Change the World is an amazing series of books for kids with inspiring characters. How did you pick the Beatles this time?
You know, as you know, this was a book series that I picked for my own kids to give them better heroes to look up to, heroes of kindness and compassion and teach them perseverance. And look at the world we're in right now, right? I was like, how do I teach my kids the power of coming together? Come together. It's the Beatles' greatest lesson. And so the I Am series did its first We Are book, and We Are the Beatles was born right there.
So come together is an important message from the Beatles, but also never let a woman tear apart a money machine.
Exactly right.
So you talk about the early struggles and persistence of them as a band, which is a great message, a very uplifting message for the kids that you're targeting, like 5, 10-year-olds.
And that's it. You know, we all see the Beatles as this kind of amazingly formed, they're perfect in every way, and they're the greatest band who ever lived, depending on what your musical tastes are. But what I want my kids to learn about them is they started like as kids. When John Lennon and Paul met, and when, you know, John Lennon was 17, Paul is 15, and George Harrison is 14 years old. And they start making music, and God, they're terrible. No, they're bad. And no one wants them to play. In fact, they can't even get hired in Liverpool anymore. And eventually they say, okay, we're going to go work in Germany. That's the only place that will book them. And Germany says, you can play here. And they play basically 1,100 hours over the course of a year. That's not just practice, but playing in front of people for over 3 hours every single day for almost a year. And the result is that's how they become the Beatles. It's the practice. It's the hard work. Like, yeah, you may have some gifts and you maybe have some talent, but if you don't work, hard work will always outwork, you know, anything else. And I want my daughter to have that lesson. I want my sons and my niece and my nephew to have that lesson, to show them that that's how you become the Beatles. It's working for it.
This series is really about inspiring kids to dream big, and we talked about that with Xavier Riddle. How does We Are the Beatles encourage these younger readers to pursue their passion and still stay grounded and discipline and that hard work ethic you were talking about?
Yeah, you know, and for me, here's what it comes down to is, you know, we all know that famous shot. Anytime you see a Beatles documentary, they cut to, you know, the scene on Ed Sullivan, the screen goes black and white, and he said, ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles. And then people start screaming, they cut to them in Shea Stadium, and there's crowds, and there's girls, and there's everything going on. Nice little story. It's not the real story. The real story is on the flight over, when they were coming to JFK that first time, they were terrified because they were at that point in London, but they had basically failed in the United States. Their first 3 records here had done poorly. It's their 4th record, the song called I Want to Hold Your Hand, that on that day breaks through. But they're like, we don't know if we're going to our doom here. This may not work at all. And I want my kids to know that too. You know, there's a moment in the book where you see John Lennon with his Aunt Mimi. And she says, you know, John, the guitar is all well and good, but you'll never make a living at it. And at the end of the book, it tells you that John Lennon eventually buys his Aunt Mimi a house. And in that house is a plaque on the wall. And the plaque on the wall says, the guitar is all well and good, John, but you'll never make a living at it. And I want my kids to know that lesson of perseverance too, right? That's the lesson of it. It's like you can have all these people who will tell you that you're not going to be able to do it. You know, I had 24 rejection letters on my first book. And today is actually, I should tell you, Scott, the 28th anniversary of my first book. My very first book came out 28 years ago today. 24 people gave me rejections. There were only 20 publishers at the time, and I got 24 rejection letters, which means some people were writing me twice to make sure I got the point. And not that I'm the Beatles or anything like that, but the point is anyone who works in those creative arts, whether it's a musician, whether it's a novelist, whether it's someone on the radio, you know what it's like, right? There's going to be plenty of people telling you no. Your job is to find the one person who says yes. And we all know that sometimes that one yes can change your life.
We're talking to Brad Meltzer. We Are The Beatles. It's part of the Ordinary People Changed the World series for kids. And since we're on SuperTalk Mississippi, something I learned a couple of months ago filling in on the show, there's a tie to Mississippi on the Beatles' success as well. Vivian Clark, who was born, I believe, in Tunica, was a disc jockey, moved to Gary, Indiana, started working with a DJ in Chicago, Al Benson, and she founded VJ Records, which bought the rights to those first 2 or 3 Beatles albums and is in part responsible for bringing the Beatles to America. So there's that Mississippi connection as well.
I love that. I didn't know that detail. It's funny. Everyone, as the book has come out and We Are the Beatles hit shelves, I love that people want to buy it for their kids, but I'm more amazed at how many adults are buying it for themselves because we all seem to have a connection to the Beatles. My father-in-law was like, I live in Florida, and every single person in Florida swears that they were at the first concert that they played in Miami. It's like the place only holds X amount of, 1,000 people or a couple hundred people. I've met 1,000 people who said they were there. So it's really wonderful to see, how this group, and that's how it is, right? Books are a connection and they unlock your ideas, but music unlocks your memories. And when you hear that old Beatles song, it just unlocks everything. And that's why even in the book we show kids how the songs came about. Yesterday, which we all know is one of the great Beatles songs, it was Paul McCartney wakes up one morning, he has this idea in his head for a song, but it's not called Yesterday, it's called Scrambled Eggs. Scrambled eggs, oh my baby, how I love your legs. Those were the original lyrics. And him and John Lennon spent weeks trying to figure out the next lines and where it should go and how it should be. And finally, Paul's like, no, it's not scrambled eggs. It's yesterday. Love is such an easy game to play. And, again, I want kids to see firsthand that art is not magic. It's hard work. It's working at that song and picking at it over and over until you get it down.
Your series, Brad, has kind of avoided controversial figures, but the Beatles had their own controversy. So how do you steer clear of that part of the Beatles' story, part of their adult lives, to focus on more universal positive values for the kids?
No, and listen, that's always the art, right? Every hero that we've ever done, and we've done, I am Amelia Earhart, I am Abraham Lincoln, I am Rosa Parks, I am Martin Luther King Jr., every person in the I Am series, we get at least one letter from someone saying, why'd you do that person? I got letters against I am George Washington. I got letters against, you name it. It's crazy. And I'm sure the Beatles will be no different. Someone will say, oh, they were on drugs. No, they got divorced. They did these things. And I don't make any excuses for any of these heroes. Of course they did. You know why? Because they're human. Every person we've written about is not perfect in any way. God's perfect. Everyone else, good luck. And so what do? Is, we don't ignore them, but we basically try and do it in an age-appropriate way. The way we dealt with their divorces and all their wives. We did show a picture of Yoko Ono in the end. We don't say, and she split up the group and people hate her for years. But we put it in there so that as a parent, if you want to explain that detail to your kid because you have an older child, have at it. But if you have a 5-year-old kid, or 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old kid, just enjoy the book and enjoy the good parts. And
we were talking about some of those controversies earlier about Pete Rose.
Yeah, and listen, Pete Rose, they clearly were waiting for him to die, right? They knew what they were doing. They knew the moment he died they were going to do that, but they didn't want to do that. And you know what? If I were doing a book on Pete Rose, I would talk about the gambling because that's a key part of his life. I don't think that for the Beatles, the key moment of their life, I think that's what you have to measure. Like, everyone has a little something in their back, their skeleton in their closet, but is that the predominant thing? And to me, are the Beatles perfect? Of course not. Did they say things that were completely embarrassing as they got older? Of course they did. that I wish that they could. I'm sure that they wish they could take back.
It's
but you can't
terrific series.
Ignore the fact that they're so amazing.
Ordinary People Change the World is a series for kids. We Are the Beatles, the latest from Brad Meltzer. Brad, I got like 20 seconds here. It's graduation time, as we mentioned. Last time you were on, we talked about Make Magic. Tell us about that book real quick.
Yeah, it was a commencement address I gave last year that was all about how to make magic in your life. And the speech went viral, but if you have someone graduating in your life from college, from high school, from elementary school, from anywhere, Make Magic is the best graduation gift you can buy. It's called Make Magic, the book of inspiration you didn't know you needed. And my God, we all need some inspiration right now and some magic in our lives.
Brad Meltzer, you're inspiring, that speech and all of your books. Thanks for coming on. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.